Frid, shalom, välkommen till dagens uppdatering. Bakom mig så ser ni hur explosionerna lyser upp. Natthimlen över Gaza och det är Rafa som bombas och israeliska tanks har rullat in med soldater. Och nu är det väl så att de här pro-Hamas demonstrationerna kommer att tillta. Hur det blir nu med fredsavtal och sånt, det får vi lägga på hyllan så länge. Men en sak som är säker. Vi går mot profetiornas uppfyllelse hur det än ser ut. Gud sviker aldrig sitt profetiska ord. Men vi som lever i ljuset och är renade i Jesu Kristi blod, vi kommer att förstå vad klockan är slagen. Det lovar ju Herren. Det står i Daniel 12 och det står bland annat i Uppenbarelseboken. Så vi får vara bedjande vänner och se till det profetiska ordet. Vi har lite klipp som följer här, bland annat AI-tekniken som vi ser utvecklas nu till en möjlig kontrollsystem för Uppenbarelseboken 13 att ta form. Det här kriget som pågår här nere, det kommer ju bara att skynda på den här utvecklingen mot kontroll av världens invånare. Men vi ska inte kontrolleras, vi ska inte ta något märke. Vi tror ju heller inte att vi blir försvunna som en del tror innan, utan här gäller det att olja i lampan, att hålla ut ända till slutet. Ha vänner och be för, och så ber vi för Israel, vi ber för judarna. Det ska vi hålla fast för vid. Gud välsigna er alla och lyssna nu till klippen så kommer det spännande saker ändå. Amen.
In recent months, Sudan has made agreements with Iran that will provide the Sudanese military with drones, weapons, and training from Iran. In exchange, Iran is being allowed to build a naval base in Sudan. This will give Iran a port on the Red Sea and provide Iran with a strategic new location from which to attack Israel. What's especially significant about the new ties between Iran and Sudan is that Sudan is named as one of the countries that will carry out a future military invasion against Israel. According to Ezekiel chapter 38 verses 2-6, Russia, Turkey, and Iran will be the leading allies of that invasion. He's 38-1 And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. 3 And say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. 4 And I will turn thee back, and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth. And all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. 5 Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. 6 Gomer, and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. 7 Be thou prepared. And prepare for thyself, thou, and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. Jewish children in Munkacs, 1933, singing Hatikvah, dreaming of Israel. Star of David. Most of the children in this video was tragically murdered in the Holocaust.
Då har vi här ett inlägg ifrån A Minute to Midnight. Leo Holman berättar hur nära krig vi verkligen är. När ryssarna börjar tala om saker så brukar man också genomföra det. Nu har man ju från Europas sida till och med sett till att man har fått långdistansrobotar i Ukraina. Och om man nu avfyrar några av dessa in på rysk territorium så säger Putin att då är väst i direkt krig med Ryssland. Och då säger Putin att man kommer att skjuta av ett taktiskt vapen emot några av Europas städer. Ja, vänner, vi lever ju i en tid då där fruktan griper tag i oss. Våran lilla lugna värld som vi hade haft för ett par år sedan har ju försvunnit totalt. Och nu är det ju bara Jesus Kristus som kan upprätthålla ordningen i vårt inre så vi inte drabbas av kaos. Och Bibeln säger ju flera gånger att vi ska inte frukta. Vi ska inte frukta. För det är när vi fruktar som vi handlar så tokigt, ni vet. Utan vi ska behålla oss i Jesu Kristi frid som bevarar vårt sinne. Det övergår vårt förstånd, står det. Lyssna nu på det här klippet som kommer. Gud välsigna er.
Needs no introduction for anyone that follows this channel and numerous other ones. Regular guest, and it's always fascinating to talk to you, Leo, so welcome back.
Yes, good to be with you, Tony.
Same. Now, do you think we've got anything we can talk about today? Not much going on, right?
Yeah, right. Not much going on. We're just at the brink of World War III. We've got Joe Biden threatening to call a climate emergency. We've got the U.S. elections coming up. We've got people talking about another pandemic of bird flu with disease X, and a Japanese scientist warning us about a new vaccine being a new mRNA vaccine coming out of his country, Japan. Yeah, there's just a few things to talk about.
And then you've got protests going on as well all over the place. So, yep,
I saw that in Ireland today.
Oh, really? Ireland?
Yeah, anti-immigrant protests going on in Dublin, Ireland today.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's certainly a lot happening then. Right. So where do we start?
I haven't written about the Dublin protests, but all I would say about that is I did read an article about it in the Irish Times, and it was written kind of like you would expect a story about the J6 protests to be written by the New York Times. I mean, they said that there were, quote, hundreds of pro-Ireland racists out in the streets, hundreds. The videos that I saw on Twitter or X, you could clearly see that it was tens of thousands. Okay. And the Irish Times even admitted in their article that it took 45 minutes for the parade of people to get through one of the biggest main intersections of Dublin. And it was holding up traffic for 45 minutes as they proceeded through this intersection. Now, if it were just 200 or 300, 400 people, do you think it would take 45 minutes to get through an intersection?
No.
I mean, the biased reporting of the Western media is just incredible to me.
It's the same here in New Zealand. It's very biased as well. Yep, for sure. Okay, and what about the Russia and Ukraine situation?
Yeah,
a
lot of developments on that front over the weekend and today, Monday. Over the last few days, we've seen more Western puppet globalist leaders come out and say that we need to send Western troops into Ukraine if Ukraine fails to hold the line against Russia. So if Russia breaks through the line and succeeds in its war with Ukraine, we should not just, get a negotiated settlement and end that war. No, we need to send Western troops. This came from Hakeem Jeffries, who is the minority Democrat leader of the House, and I hesitate to even call him minority leader of the U.S. House of Representatives because the Republicans only have like a 1 or 2 vote majority, and so Jeffries is almost every bit as powerful as the Speaker of the House right now because he is because of the slim margin that Mike Johnson, the Speaker, the Republican Speaker, has to work with. And so this man's very powerful. He is coming out on CBS Sunday morning telecast or TV show yesterday saying that we need to that the U.S. will, quote, likely have to send troops to Ukraine if Russia is successful in that war. And so not just money, but troops on the ground. And then Putin and his Putin and the foreign ministry spokesperson in Russia both came out with statements saying that if this happens, it's going to be lights out in London and some of these other Western capitals. They will basically be vaporized in minutes. And they also called for a tactical nuclear weapons drill to be held in Russia on the Ukrainian border in preparation for any Western troops that may show their faces in Ukraine. Putin is now sending a signal that he is not bluffing. There's this lieutenant colonel retired named Earl Rasmussen who put out a video yesterday saying this guy Putin is not bluffing. And by him organizing this tactical nuclear drill, that is sending a very clear statement to the West. You had better reevaluate these plans to send your troops into Ukraine because I am going to use these tactical nuclear weapons on them. And he also talked about potentially taking the fight directly to the source because David Cameron, the foreign secretary of the UK, former prime minister, came out a couple days ago and said that the Ukraine should use its UK-provided long-range missiles to fire deep inside of Russian territory. Now, this goes totally against all former directives that have been given to the Ukrainians about the use of these long-range missiles. Any long-range missiles that could reach Russia were given to them with strict orders by the US and the UK to only use them inside Ukrainian territory, on Russian-held territory inside Ukraine. They were not to be used on Russia proper. So this is a big, huge turn of events where David Cameron, is now coming out and saying that you, Mr. Zelensky, president of Ukraine, have our permission to use these weapons to, potentially hit Moscow and some other major population centers inside Russia. Can you imagine if Ukraine does that? Putin has said if that happens, he will consider the UK to now be a direct combatant in this war, and they will be treated as a direct combatant. And you know what that means. He will launch missiles against UK targets inside the UK. And so this is where we're heading, I think, Tony. I don't know how far out this rhetoric is ahead of actual events on the ground, but usually when they start talking like this, the pattern that we've seen during this war is it doesn't even take very long once they start changing their rhetoric to actually make good on the rhetoric and do what they say. So, we could wake up tomorrow to learn that the Ukrainians have fired missiles, long-range ballistic cruise missiles, whatever, on Moscow, and that maybe the next day or two later we wake up and find out that London has been hit with nuclear weapons. I mean, this is where it's going.
Ja, vänner, Bibeln den talar ju om att ett system ska komma som ska vara globalt, och det kommer att handla om kontroll, och det kommer att handla om ekonomi. Och vi ser ett sådant system börjar ta form. Och vi läser i Uppenbarelseboken 13, 16-18. Och det systemet tvingar alla små, stora, rika och fattiga, fria och slavar att ta emot ett märke på högra handen eller på pannan, så att ingen kan köpa eller sälja utom den som har märket, vilddjurets namn eller dess namns tal. Här gäller det att vara vis. Den som har förstånd må räkna ut vilddjurets tal, ty det är en människas tal och dess namn är 666. Här gäller det alltså att akta på det profetiska ordet för att kunna förstå det här då. Och det ska vi göra, vi ska vandra i ljuset och rena oss inför Herren, och då kommer han att uppenbara vad klockan är slagen. Och de visa ska förstå det, står det ju i Daniel 12. Och jag vet inte om vi är speciellt visa, men Guds ord och korset är Guds visdom, står det. Jesus Kristus vet allt. Och han kommer att tala om för oss vilken tid vi lever i. Det är där det handlar om. Ja, det krävs alltså kvantdatorer och det krävs AI-teknik och det krävs en stor kris, kan vi ju räkna ut här, för att detta system ska kunna komma överhuvudtaget då. Ett digitalt system som tar över all ekonomi, och det är ju alla beroende av. Ska vi gissa då att det kommer en global ekonomisk kris nu förr eller senare? Ja, Gud välsigna er då. Här kommer först ett klipp från Sling and Stone och sen kommer det ett klipp med James Cadiz om AI-teknik. Det här är skrämmande, vänner, att vi är framme vid ändetidens uppfyllan av det profetiska ordet. Gud välsigna er, håll till godo nu med de här klippen här som kommer.
Prophet constructs an image of the beast and causes it to speak. The image of the beast orders the death of anyone who will not worship it, and then the false prophet orders everyone to receive the mark of the beast. When the mark of the beast does fully come into the world, it's clear that the way they will force people into submission with this is through their finances. This is what I believe we are starting to see happen today. Technological systems of money and the control of money that can be turned off by third parties for a multitude of reasons is increasing day by day. The US dollar could go digital. Here's what you need to know. It's official. The United States is developing a bank-to-bank digital currency. Our cash-free future is getting closer. Within these articles, one of them tells us that around 100 countries are exploring at one level or another to be involved with CBDCs or central bank digital currencies. If money goes 100% digital, turning people's access off to their money clearly will be used as a weapon against them. We've even seen this start to happen in recent times. No apologies from weaponized banks canceling faith groups. An increasing number of Christian and conservative organizations say they're being debanked. Accounts are closed, payment processors are turned off, or some are placed on a donor blacklist. Among the victims, Indigenous Advanced Ministries, which helps orphans and widows in Africa. Its account was closed by Bank of America. Family Council of Arkansas, which promotes traditional family values, was canceled by JP Morgan Chase. The Pro-Family Ruth Institute lost its payment processor after being targeted as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. As these types of egregious actions take place, it's worth considering diversifying some of your digital money and anything that's controlled digitally into things that cannot be controlled by technology. What we're also seeing take place in the world today that will lead to the mark of the beast is the desire for a one world government.
At Dubai Expo 2020. And the title of this session, are we ready for a new world order?
60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while.
We need a single global order.
Every single day, articles are being written about globalization and one world governments. This is getting people used to the idea before it fully comes. 5 facts you need to understand the new global order. It's time to seriously consider the advantages of a world federal government. Articles like this, along with organizations such as the WEF, the UN, the World Government Summit, and the list goes on and on. From the way the world looks right now, the climate, health scares, and world war seems to be the 3 leading causes that are pushing governments and people to talk about and consider a one world government. Luckily, the Bible tells us in the book of Revelation another very crucial aspect about how this will come about, and it will be very obvious to any Bible-believing Christians who are alive at that time. Before we look at that, I want to
Antichrist, then you want to create a counterfeit. And in that counterfeit, what do you want to do? If you want to replace the consciousness of God with a new God, you want to create a God that can see all things and know all things. And that is the God of AI. That's what Yuval Harari is doing. He is utilizing the spirit of Antichrist, in essence, to replace the very thing that only God is capable of. AI can't see like God can see. But look at what they're doing, folks. This is what's staggering. Look at the lengths that they are going to be able to replace God by seeing and understanding things. Watch what he says. This is crazy. Listen.
The COVID crisis as a watershed moment in terms of surveillance, data surveillance, and so on. Explain to us your fears, your concerns about this, and how we can deal with it.
Okay, listen carefully to how Yuval answers this question. What he says is very telling. And folks, let me remind you of something. This was literally, I'm not joking, like this is no joke. This was almost 4 years ago. Almost 4 years ago. Listen to this. This is heavy. Listen.
No, I think maybe in a couple of decades when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored. That we agree.
By the way, in case you didn't understand his accent, he said this is the moment when everything became monitored. This is the moment where everything became digital and everything became monitored. And by the way, I just want to make a little side note here. I am going to interrupt what he says every now and again to provide commentary. This is a fair use thing. It's one of the things that I'm required to do when I make these videos. The other thing is, if you want to watch the whole video, you can go and search out the video and you can watch it in its entirety. I know that there's been some people that have been very bothered by some of my commentary on this. That's okay. I don't want to bother people, but I want to do what I feel led by the Lord to do. So take a very close listen to what he has to say here, because his answer is very telling.
To be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin. Because really we haven't seen anything yet. I think that the big process that's happening right now in the world is hacking human beings, the ability to hack humans, to understand deeply what's happening within you.
Okay, so when he talks about hacking human beings, I want to remind you of something, right? We talked about surveillance. What he's saying about surveillance, this is in essence another characteristic of the spirit of Antichrist. God sees all things, knows all things, so I'm going to create a tool within AI and so on and so forth where I can watch you all the time because I'm the new God, right? That's what's happening here. And then now he's talking about hacking human beings. He's speaking about replacing God, the one who created all of mankind. He's now talking about replacing God because he's talking about transhumanism. This is the new Tower of Babel. This is the spirit of Antichrist. This is replacing God's function, replacing God's role, replacing God's identity, and seeking to deceive people into thinking that God is actually better. So look what he says, because he's about to bring in an illustration of him being homosexual and how he didn't realize he was homosexual until he was in his 20s. Yet with this tool, the government will be able to know he's a homosexual far before that time. And if that doesn't alarm you, wait until you hear what he says next.
What makes you go? And for that, the most important data is not what you read and who you meet and what you buy. It's what's happening inside your body. So we had these two big revolutions, the computer science revolution or the infotech revolution, and the revolution in the biological sciences.
Okay, so computer revolution, biological science revolution, and the one thing that you have to remember, right, is he's talking about, the way it used to be, they look at what you read, what you eat, what you talk about, the friends that you make associations with. This is all external stuff that mankind was designed by God to analyze and interact with, and we're even given instruction in the Bible by God on how to interact with people around us, how we interact with mankind, what we do with our eating, what we do with our speaking, what we do with our breathing, how we talk to people, how we interact with people. But now he's saying, I want to take it deeper. He's basically seeking to separate any association with anything that's spiritual. He wants to make it purely biological, and then he wants to replace the God that the spirit within us pursues by going to something that is very, very different, right? This is satanic, and he sounds very convincing, but what he's doing here is literally satanic. Listen to this.
And they are still separate, but they are about to merge. They are merging around, I would say, the biometric sensor. It's the thing, it's the gadget, it's the technology that converts biological data into digital data that can be analyzed by computers. And having the ability to really monitor people under the skin, this is the biggest game changer of all.
When he talks about biological data being converted into digital data so that it can be analyzed by computers, what he doesn't realize is he's taking what I would call vital signs, okay? Not biological data. He's talking about vital signs. He's talking about heartbeats. He's talking about the elevation of blood pressure. He's talking about temperature. He's talking about breathing levels. He's talking about the way eyes move. He's saying we should take that information, bring it into, through our sensors, digital biometric sensors, bring it into a computer so a computer analyzes it. But I want to make myself very, very clear. There is no supercomputer on the face of the earth that is more complex than the human brain, number one. So you can say we're bringing all these complexities in, we're making these microchips or whatever, but that's just simply mankind pretending to be God when what God already created is far more complex. How do we know that the human brain is far more complex than any supercomputer? Because mankind created those supercomputers, okay? Think about that for a second. If you don't believe me, just study proteins in your body. Study DNA. Take a moment to study DNA. Yuval is not talking about the complexities of those mechanisms because they're far more complicated with respect to its digital prowess than anything that's out there, okay? He's simply referring to biometric data that determines what your temperature is, how your heart is beating. Those are the things that he's talking about. And actually, you can see it. He's very subtle about how he communicates that. He wants it to sound superior to you guys, but he's deceiving you into believing or taking into or embracing the spirit of Antichrist. Look what he says.
Because this is the key for getting to know people better than they know themselves. I often give the example from my own personal life that I realized I was gay only when I was 21. And I keep thinking about the time when I was 15, 16, how could I have missed it? Something so important about myself should have been obvious, but I didn't know. Now, today, or in 5 or 10 years, any algorithm of Microsoft or Amazon or the government would be able to know such a thing when I'm 12 or 13, just by monitoring what's happening in my body, what's happening to my eyes when let's say I see a boy and a girl walking on the beach. Where do my eyes focus? So this is the crucial revolution.
So let me tell you why that's a serious problem, right? Because I can take that digital biometric data, right? In other words, I can take that biometric data, which is telling me what my biology is doing. I can record it into something digital, and then I can create an algorithm. He said it, like the government. He said it. The government, Microsoft, Google, right? Whatever, Amazon. I can take that data and I can create an algorithm that is based on the dark, demonic, and very deprived soul of man that is functioning through its dead and sinful nature to interpret that data in a way that will influence me or deceive me into coming to a conclusion. So think about it like this. If I'm a 12-year-old boy, or let's say I'm an 8-year-old boy, and I see a woman and a man on the beach, and I'm in the stage of my life where I spend more time staring at the man and not the woman, they would take that biological data, as they would call it, that biometric data, And they would immediately seek to program me into thinking that I'm gay because I spent all that time looking at that man, when in reality, what was probably going on was I was developing some type of curiosity based on something else that I was seeing, and it had nothing to do with me being gay. But if I can replace the position of God by seeking to act like some spirit that tells somebody something based on their biometric data, I can control them. I can move them. I can manipulate them. By the way, I just want you to know this. This is exactly what the serpent does. This is exactly what the devil does. The devil